Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is about all the things you need to know before making any type of luxury purchase. And this video is definitely a must watch for the first time luxury buyer. But even if you've been purchasing luxury items for many years, I still think that there is something to learn and pick up from this video. And if this is your first time here, hi, my name is Carol and I make new videos every single week on luxury, fashion, and style tips. So if you like this video, definitely check out my channel, watch a few more of my other videos, and subscribe, as well as hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on my future uploads. So I have 15 tips and tricks to share with you guys, so let's get into them. So let's say you have something in mind that you want to purchase. The first tip I have for you guys is to check if this designer is sold online at different retailers aside from the brand's own website. Because many times a brand will sell their merchandise at a wholesale price to a retailer, and then the retailer can then turn around and sell those items at usually the same retail price as the designer brand is selling it for also. But there are times that they will be selling it at a slightly lower retail price. And I've seen this a lot, for example, with European companies that are selling to US customers, or there are some cases like Farfetch, which sources their items from different boutiques around the world. So it's always a good idea to check for these differences in prices. And not to mention, a lot of these online retailers do offer their own discount codes and sales on these items. Whereas if you were to buy it from the brand directly, there's usually only end of season sales twice a year. So many times you'll be able to buy an item for a better price if you get it from an authorized online retailer compared to if you were to buy it from the designer boutique itself. But there are some luxury brands that don't sell their items online outside of their own website. So in cases like Dior, you can find it online at their own e-commerce website, but you won't be able to find it on websites such as My Teresa or Farfetch or Saks Fifth Avenue, for example. Or in cases like Chanel, they just don't have much of an online presence. So in cases like this, tip number 2 is to consider buying from a location of this designer brand that is within a department store. So for instance, a Dior within Saks Fifth Avenue or a Chanel within Nordstrom, for example. Because if you purchase from a department store, even though a designer brand has its own storefront and its own employees, they still have to adhere to some of the policies of the department store. So you'll be able to earn points on your loyalty card, or you'll be able to earn rewards towards future purchases. And sometimes you'll be able to save 10% off your first purchase or 10% off the whole day's purchases if you open a credit card with the department store. Now, I'm not saying that you should just go ahead and open credit cards with every single department store, but if you're able to, afford the items, if you have the cash available in your bank and it's a matter of paying with a debit card or a credit card, it might be worth it to save 10% if you just open a credit card with them. And the third thing you must know is to check the return policy. And I don't mean just check on your receipt to see what it says in terms of the return policy and the return window, but I mean, ask the sales associate exactly what the return policy is. And this point is really so important because I've made this mistake so many times myself, and I've even made this mistake recently too. So you definitely have to ask your sales associate their return policy before you make a purchase, because there are many cases when you can only exchange an item for store credit. You can actually do a return. And what good is it if you read the receipt and check the return policy after you've made a purchase? If you want to return something, you can't even do it. And sometimes if you buy an item from a Louis Vuitton standalone boutique versus a Louis Vuitton within Saks Fifth Avenue, for example, the return policies will be different in cases like that, as well as if you were to buy it from Louis Vuitton online, the return policy is also different for that. So definitely check all of this out, and also check the fine print and ask your sales associate about the fine print to see if any items are final sale. And I personally made this mistake recently when I purchased my 30 Montagne belt from Dior, because when I went into the Dior boutique, they didn't have the belt I wanted in stock. I was only able to try on some other styles in a similar size to mine just to make sure that it fit. And I'll go into that part later on in this video. But for now, let's focus on buying things without knowing the return policy. So I had to pay for this item and sign all the paperwork to purchase this item sight unseen. And I didn't think anything of it. I knew their return policy was 10 days, so I thought I was good. But eventually the belt got to me and I thought there were some issues with it. So I decided to take it back to the Dior boutique to see if I could get an exchange for it. And they told me that belts were final sale and that I couldn't exchange it. So I was so confused because there was nothing on the return policy that specifically said that belts were final sale. Apparently, as they told me, belts were included under the accessories portion of the fine print, because it did say that accessories were excluded from the return policy. And luckily, they did end up saying that they would make an exception for me and allow me to exchange it for a different belt if I want it. But I don't really like that. I don't really like how they kind of say, oh, I'm making an exception for you. When in a case like that, I think it was just not really my fault because I couldn't actually check out the piece and inspect it myself before I purchased it. So yes, they should have made an exception because I never saw the item. And it's kind of their fault for sending me an item that was damaged to begin with. So when I was there trying to exchange the belt, I decided to ask the sales associate exactly what could be returned, and specifically if you could return handbags. And he told me that yes, you could return handbags. Now fast forward a couple months to just 2 days ago when I was at the Dior boutique trying to return a bag. And I'm not saying that they gave me that much trouble with it because they made an exception for me. But basically what happened was I handed them the bag to return. They took it to the back and then the lady came back and said that their manager will talk to me soon. So I waited there for a while and eventually the manager came out and told me, great news, we're able to make an exception for you and allow you to return this bag. And I was so caught off guard. I really should have asked him at that point in time, what do you mean make an exception for me? But I didn't ask, unfortunately, and the return process just continued smoothly, I guess, and I got my money back for it. So it's not too big of a deal, but I did specifically ask in the past if handbags could be returned, but turns out it's also only in cases of exceptions. So I don't know, it's pretty shady in my opinion, but that's just something that I'm learning from, and I'm telling you guys this so you can be better prepared. And the fourth thing you must know is don't assume that the sales associates know everything. They really should be experts in the brand, in their product offerings and that type of thing, but that's not always the case. And more so, they don't always know about pending price increases or future collections, for example. For information like that, it's often better to get your information online, on websites like Purse Forum, for example, where members of Purse Forum usually find out about new releases or price increases before the sales associates themselves even know. Sometimes they might not be aware completely, or they might be withholding information from you. And to drive this point home, I'm going to talk about that Dior belt for a little bit longer because when I purchased that belt, the sales associate told me that the smallest size they made in it was 75 centimeters. So I figured, okay, if that's the smallest size, I'll just purchase it and then I'll hand the belt off to them so they can have an extra hole punched in it. But later I found out on their website that they made the belt in the 70 centimeter size, which would have been the size that fit me the best. Not to mention, after I bought the belt, the lockdowns and quarantines started happening, so I wasn't able to give them my belt to get the extra hole punched. And if I had just bought the belt online, I would be wearing that belt right now instead of having it just sit in my closet. And tip number 5 is to do your research beforehand on anything that you're thinking of purchasing. So let's say you saw a picture of a very pretty bag on Instagram. Don't buy that bag just because you see a few photos of it styled really nicely in an ad campaign or sitting nicely on a shelf, because pictures only tell you so much. You really have to watch reviews and see how people are liking their purchase before you can make a decision on whether it's a good purchase for you. You can really find so many bag reviews on YouTube, and on my channel I try to do a review for every single bag that I own. And if you're interested, I'll leave my bag review playlist up here and in the description box below. So really try to watch a few videos of reviews of any item that you're thinking of purchasing so you get a well-rounded opinion of that item. And if you have any questions about an item that I featured on my channel, or maybe if I haven't featured it, definitely feel free to ask me those questions, whether I've done a review on them or not. And then when you go to the boutique to purchase this item, also take the time to try it on, put all of your belongings in it to make sure it works, it fits and everything. Also test it for the weight when it's empty and also when it's full, and really make sure that you are 100% happy with it before you decide to hand them your credit card. And I want to stress that you should expect to spend a good amount of time in the boutique when you're making any purchase. Personally, even in cases when I know exactly what I'm thinking of purchasing and I intend on just going in and out of the boutique in like 10 minutes flat, that never happens. I always spend upwards of an hour in there just because there's so many little things that you have to check on the bag, that the sales associate has to process the purchase for you, wrap things up for you. And really the experience should not be something that you're rushing through. You should really be enjoying it. Make sure you're completely happy with it, because your experience in the boutique does end up affecting how you end up enjoying your item. And tip number 7 is especially important for those of you who are thinking of making your first luxury purchase, but this also really applies to anyone who is thinking of branching out and trying something new. So try to go to a bunch of different boutiques, a bunch of different designers, and really get a feel of the different types of leather that they offer and the different hardwares, because there are so many different kinds of leather that you can get, from a smooth leather to a grained leather, and even the same colored hardware. So gold hardware or silver hardware, for example, can have differences in them from designer to designer. Within the gold hardware category, for example, you can have aged gold hardware, or you can have a very shiny gold hardware. There is also light gold hardware too. So every designer is different, and really make sure that the color really suits you before you decide to purchase something. And yes, this is also a mistake that I've made, because when I first purchased my Chanel Classic Flap, I didn't know that they made it in caviar and lambskin also. So I went into the boutique and I just said, I want to buy the Chanel Classic Flap in the medium size, in the black with gold hardware. And they brought out the caviar version of it, and I thought, ooh, classic flap, that's what I want. So I purchased it. And then it was afterwards that I realized that they made it in lambskin. And when I really thought about it, what I wanted was the lambskin, not the caviar. So I ended up selling the caviar to get the lambskin. So I obviously lost money in doing that. So that is definitely something that you can avoid by checking out all the different types of leather before you purchase something. Now let's say you're finally ready to purchase an item. You should ask the sales associate if they have any more of that item in the back that is brand new and hasn't been on display before. And usually when I ask the sales associate a question like this, they'll ask me if I'm sure I'm going to be purchasing that item, because they don't want to be showing me a brand new item in the back if I'm not sure that I'm going to be purchasing it. Because let's say, for instance, someone else walks into the boutique tomorrow and they really want that fresh out of the box piece, and if the sales associate can't give them that item, they're not going to purchase it. So it really is more beneficial for them if they can convince you to get the display piece, and then another person can come in and they can take the one in the back. But you're the one that came into the store first, and it's really first come, first serve. So it's in your own best interest to get one in the back that is pristine. No one has touched it, played with it, got their grimy fingerprints on it or anything, because you deserve as good of an item as the next person does. Except you got there first. And if you're not completely happy with the item that they show you, whether it's because there's a defect on the bag or whether the quality of the leather is not up to your standards, don't be afraid to ask the sales associate to show you multiples of the same item so you can compare them, because not all leather is made equal. Some might be more saturated in color, some could be glossier versus more matte, and sometimes the grains or natural veining on the leather could also be different. Now this 10th tip is a little bit polarizing, because there are some people that feel very strongly about it one way, and then there are others that are on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. For me, I personally think that you should never consider a luxury purchase an investment. You should only buy a luxury item if you really think you're going to love it and enjoy using it, and not because you think you can make a quick buck from selling it later in the future, either if you end up not liking it or you just leave it sitting around until the next price increase. because you never know what is going to happen with the resale market. I will argue that even with Hermes, Kellys, or Birkins, you never know what's going to happen with the resale market. Maybe Hermes is going to make these bags available to the general public in the next month, and it's no longer going to fetch that high of a price tag. So it's much better to buy these non-essential luxury items because you really love it and not because you think you can make a profit from selling it. This next point is so important, and that is if you're saving up for your dream bag, for example, items like SLGs and sunglasses and a pair of shoes is really not worth your time or your money because it's just going to push your end goal of buying the bag much further away. And buying an SLG from the same brand as the bag that you want is not going to make you want the bag any less. And along the same lines, don't buy something that looks similar to your dream item just because it costs less. So for example, if you really have your eyes set on the Chanel Classic Flap and you see the Gucci Marmont flap bag and you think, this looks very similar to the Classic Flap, let me just purchase this and use it while I save up for the more expensive Classic Flap. You've just wasted $1,000 something, $2,000 that you could have put towards the Classic Flap purchase. So for me personally, my holy grail bag when I couldn't afford anything luxury was the Chanel Classic Flap, and that was the first luxury purchase that I ever made. I just had my eyes dead set on that bag and I was working my way towards purchasing that, and I didn't let anything else distract me, and I was able to purchase the Classic Flap much faster than I would have if I had bought an SLG here and there, a pair of sunglasses, a YSL bag, and a bunch of pairs of shoes. And tip number 13, don't be afraid to leave empty-handed. Now personally, I do most of my browsing online, and when I go into the boutique, I usually have something that I am set on purchasing. But for you, you might really enjoy window shopping and just browsing and trying things on without committing to a purchase, and that is perfectly fine. So schedule a day with your girlfriends or go by yourself just for a day of fun, and the sales associates that give you an attitude because you're not buying anything, well, they're not worth your time, not the other way around. And tip number 14 is don't be afraid to ask for the price. I find that usually handbags will have a price tag on the inside of the bag, just in a pocket or something that is not super visible, but you can still find out for yourself. But for items like costume jewelry or scarves, the price tag might not be on the item itself. So just ask the sales associate for the price, and they should tell you without making you feel bad about it. And now for the final tip, which is don't be persuaded by essays that are trying to upsell you on a bunch of extras that you don't need. So usually I'll notice that when I'm really considering a bag and they can sense that I'm going to make a purchase, they'll start showing me scarves and bag charms and bag straps that you can customize the bag with and make it look so much better. But really, they should be designing a bag so it could be used by itself, not with all these extra accessories that I really don't need. Personally, I will never buy a bag if I don't like how it looks, just the bag as itself. If I have to buy a twilly or something just to make me like the bag, that bag is not worth my money. So that is something you should really think about when they start throwing all these items on top of the bag, because the prices of those extra items really adds up. A bag charm is usually like a couple $100, a bag strap can be like $1,000, and a scarf is probably the cheapest of all of them, but that's still like $200 for a single scarf, and usually you do need to buy two for a single bag, so that's $400. So consider just buying the bag, bringing it home and using it as is. And if you really think that you want to add something extra to spice up your bag, you can always return and purchase it a different day. So those are the 15 tips and tricks I have to share with you guys about what to do and what to avoid when you're making a luxury purchase. And whether you're a first-time luxury buyer or you've been purchasing luxury items for a while now, I hope you learned something new from this video. And if you like this video, definitely do give it a thumbs up. And let me know in the comments down below if you have any tips and tricks of your own that I did not mention, because I would love to learn about more ways that I could make my luxury shopping experience better, and I'm sure others would too. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, definitely do consider subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell so you don't miss out on my future uploads. And I'll leave 2 videos up on the screen for you to watch next. So I'll see you very soon. Bye for now.